I've pulled out of 2 races in the last few weeks. I'm a pro runner with no planned races on the schedule. I stopped taking my ADHD medication. I moved house, I got sick, and somewhere in and amongst all of that, I lost all routine and rhythm in my life completely. Which, if you know anything about ADHD or being an athlete, that's kind of the worst possible thing that can happen. So this is where I'm actually at and what I'm doing about it. And at the time of filming, it is currently 35 degrees Celsius. So I'm sat in the shade and my ice bath is being brought to me as we speak. Thank you very much, sir. I'm gonna put my feet in this bucket of icy water. Oh yeah. So that I can survive filming this video outside, because the inside of our house, it's a building site right now. If I was to describe the last 6 weeks in one word, it would be uprooted. And that's not entirely negative, because I'm happy that our lives have been uprooted from Manchester to down south, because in the bigger picture, this is the right place for us. But I really have had no routine, no structure, no rhythm to what I've been doing, because it's felt pretty impossible to have any of those things. That makes me feel incredibly out of control of my life. It's made my ADHD worse, coupled with stopping the ADHD medication, of course. It's made us both feel pretty anxious at times. And for a brain that thrives on momentum, pattern, rhythm, it's not just been inconvenient, it's been genuinely destabilizing. So how did we get here? We moved house at the end of March. We documented that whole process for you, explained what it means to us, and I'm still so excited to be here and to be building our lives down south again. But the house, it's a lot. Last week, we had the entire house rewired and plastered. We've been ripping up carpets, living entirely in the living room whilst we keep the upstairs a shell for renovations. Our bathroom is about to be ripped out and we're having a new boiler put in next week. The loft is being boarded as we speak. And having tradespeople in and out most days between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 a.m. and staying all day in the place that you live and work, it just makes everything really practically difficult. In and amongst all of that, I have been building back from an injury, continuing to rehab that knee injury, and trying to build back to racing. And if you haven't seen the last video we shared, I DNF'd my first track race back. It wasn't a disaster, it was just a real clear signal that my body wasn't quite ready for that yet. I stayed in Belfast for a little bit and spent some time with Kira, which was really special, and I'm glad I did that. I had a few later nights than I maybe should have done whilst I was out there, but I've got zero regrets on that front. She's one of my best friends. She lives over in Ireland. She's going through cancer treatment at the moment, and I don't get to see her very often. But upon coming home from that trip, I got sick, and I don't know what it is. It's something going around at the moment in the summer, which feels like the winter because everyone is getting sick right now, and it really knocked me. And you can probably still hear a little bit of it rumbling in the background of my voice. I'm not back to full health yet, but I am training. And I think the concoction of all of that, stopping my ADHD medication 2 weeks after that move, living in the renovation, not having the consistency in training that I probably need, and then getting sick, it's the cocktail of all of them landing pretty much at the same time, with no real downtime or chance to catch my breath between any of it, that's left me in a bit of a pickle. And honestly, I think looking at life probably since the injury, I don't think we've had 2-3 consecutive normal weeks. And there's also not much sign of it letting up in the next few weeks, because I'm still figuring out what my new normal is. Not being on stimulant medication after being on it for the best part of a year. I'm having to relearn how to manage my everyday, my energy, my focus, or lack of. I'm working with a therapist to actually get to the center of what those tools are that are going to allow me to help myself in a normal week, let alone a week of renovation chaos. And ultimately, the structure that I need just doesn't exist right now. I'm gonna find out what it is, and I'm gonna get there, and I'm sure that once this work starts to taper off a little bit and we have a bedroom, isn't that gonna be amazing? A bedroom and a functioning bathroom. I'm gonna find that structure, but right now I am still working it out, and it's not solved. I don't want anyone to think this is a video of me just complaining about all the things that have been going wrong in my life and me just doing nothing about it, because that is not the case. I am doing some things to help myself in this slightly unavoidable scenario. And that is where Headspace has come in genuinely so clutch in the last few weeks, because when anything that resembles a structure in your life disappears overnight and your mind is already racing at 1,000,000 miles an hour, the last thing you do is set aside time to decompress and actually help yourself. But with Headspace, I've been able to do that. And I think something that we often forget is that making space and time to decompress and to look after your mental health does take action. It does take a choice, but the more that you reduce the barrier to that action, the easier it's going to be for it to naturally slot into your routine. The thing that's actually helped me most recently has been the focused soundscapes when I'm trying to work, but my brain is all over the place. I can find myself a quiet corner and just put one of these on, and something about it just quietens things down that little bit. Research actually shows that just 5 minutes of headspace a day reduces stress, which I needed someone to tell me was worth doing, because 5 minutes almost felt too small to matter. And turns out it's not. If any of this sounds familiar, first of all, you are not alone. I think so many people are stressed just with their day-to-day lives at the moment. And this is a small thing that can actually help.
Begin to let go of any thinking or doing. And as best you can in this moment, allow your body to relax.
You can try Headspace completely free for 60 days using my link at the top of the description. That's 2 full months, guys, which is long enough to actually feel a difference, and it's also much longer than their standard free trial. Thank you, Headspace, for giving me some small moments of calm in the chaos and for sponsoring today's video. It's not all doom and gloom though. A couple of weeks ago, actually before the 3,000 meter race, I had some testing done over at St. Mary's, and I'm not going to give you the full readout from that because all of the data and what it means is going to be explained in the next video that's coming out next week, followed by explaining what my zones are from all of that data, so make sure you're subscribed if you want to see that. But I can tell you that the results were genuinely really encouraging. Better than I expected. Having never taken almost 3 months off completely from exercise, no running but also no cross training, my outlook on where my fitness might be a few months back into structured training was pretty negative, because I just assumed I would have to spend a long time working back to where I was. And what the numbers told us is it's not as bad as I thought. I am fit, but what those lab numbers don't quite tell you is how this is all going to shake out in a pretty intense, pretty fast track race. With the move and things being pretty unpredictable, I have had to change sessions around, and I have gotten in very limited, intense speed work, which is pretty important for racing on the track, especially in a 3,000 meters. And what that race in Belfast told me, or that DNF in that race, is that that part of the puzzle isn't quite there yet. And I really wanted to make a track season work this year because it's exciting, it's something I really enjoy, and it puts the fun back into training, but ultimately I can't force it. If my speed endurance isn't quite there yet, I need to work on that more in training before I can use it in a race. And so I don't think the 3,000 meter race was a mistake. We couldn't have known that that's where I would be until we tried. As much as you get information from training, sometimes you just have to put yourself in a race to find out exactly where you're at. And no blueprint exists for how to come back from these injuries perfectly, especially when you haven't done it before, especially when you're dealing with tendons that require continued input, continued rehab, continued tweaking of how you train. And so sometimes you only get that real information when you go out there and give it a try. So because of how that race went, getting sick afterwards, and looking at the reality of where my training is at, I decided to pull out of the 5,000 meter race that I was due to do in Belgium this weekend just gone, and the 10K race I was due to race in early June out in New York. And it's not that I'm not ready to do those races. I could go out there and race and give it my best and finish where I finish in the field, run the times that I'd run for where I'm at. But whilst it can be fun to race, maybe not so when you don't perform how you would like to, sometimes that's just racing. Racing does interrupt training. Going and doing those races would mean a modified training week that week. It would mean travel. It would mean probably a mini taper going into those races, recovery after the races, and when you're trying to build an engine, those weeks become quite expensive because of the training that you would be missing if you were just in a consistent training block. And that's the nuance that I've been grappling with over the last couple of weeks, because there's one version of this where I go out there and I race, I see where I'm at and I just accept it, and then there's what the bigger picture needs right now. And a lot of the time it's difficult to park the ego and make the more mature, more difficult call in both of those scenarios. If I go out there and race and don't perform how I would like to, or how I know I'm capable of when I'm really fit, that's a situation where I have to park the ego. And if I don't race and I commit to just doing some pretty unsexy, pretty boring, pretty base building training, that's also parking the ego, because that's not as flashy as going out there and testing the wheels out. But I am thinking long term, and long term for me is the marathon. It is trying to make it to the Olympics. It is working backwards for every marathon, every training block between then and now. And I really want my next marathon block to start in August. So every clean, uninterrupted week between now and then gets me starting that marathon block in a better spot. If I'm really honest, that is worth way more to me than the best 5K I can run in June. In terms of what that means for the summer, racing is out for the next month or so. We're also getting married in June, which creates a pretty busy busy month, but racing in July is still on the cards. It's also not a definite. I'm putting no pressure on it, and I'm also not making any promises. I'm just leaving the door open that if it feels right to race in July, and that works for the bigger picture, that gets me in a better spot for starting a marathon block in August, then I'll race. And having sat back and really reflected on this, I think maybe this stripped back period of just head to the grindstone, training and working on getting fitter, no races, no travel, just training, might be exactly what my brain needs as well to find that rhythm again. The structure that I have been craving since our lives got flipped upside down. And wouldn't that be a really nice runway into a marathon block? Rather than getting there feeling frazzled and still feeling like I need to wrap my head around how to have a routine. So I'm sorry if I've let anyone down, because there might not be a ton of race videos this summer, which can be really fun to film and really exciting to watch. But I hope that for anyone watching that is sitting in a changed plan right now, I want you to know that changing the plan doesn't mean failing the plan. It just means this is the plan. You're in charge of the plan. If the plan changes, you've just rubbed a bit out and corrected it. And I guess the grind isn't always the racing and the flashy results. It is also the training and the patience that gets you there. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Come back next week to find out what that training is going to look like now that I know exactly where my threshold and VO2 max is. And I'm going to go inside because I'm melting. And I'm back here to remind you, QR code is on screen, guys. If you need a reset today, the link is at the top of the description. 60 days. Free. Love the grind.
Do it like